The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Sarah Martinez unwrapped her turkey sandwich at her desk, her stomach growling audibly after skipping breakfast. She'd been working nonstop for 3 hours, answering customer calls and processing orders for the mid-sized logistics company in downtown Chicago. The November wind rattled the office windows, and she could smell the aroma of her simple lunch mixing with the sterile office air. Her hands trembled slightly from hunger as she took her first bite, savoring the momentary relief. The break room was occupied by a birthday celebration she didn't want to interrupt, so eating at her desk seemed like the logical choice. Little did she know that this simple act would set off a chain of events that would transform her entire career. "What do you think you're doing?" The voice of her supervisor, Mark Thompson, cut through the office chatter like a knife. His face was flushed red, and his tie seemed to tighten around his neck as he approached her cubicle with heavy footsteps. Sarah looked up, mid-chew, her heart immediately sinking as she recognized the familiar storm brewing in his eyes. The surrounding co-workers fell silent, their conversations dying as they sensed the tension building in the air. Mark's reputation for public confrontations was well known throughout the office, but Sarah had never been on the receiving end. She quickly swallowed her bite, her throat suddenly dry as she prepared for what was coming next. "This is completely unprofessional behavior, Martinez." Mark's voice echoed across the open floor plan, drawing stares from every corner of the office. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as 20 pairs of eyes focused on her, some sympathetic, others curious about the drama unfolding. Her carefully wrapped sandwich sat half-eaten on her desk, suddenly looking like evidence of a crime she didn't know she'd committed. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Mark continued his tirade, his words about workplace standards and proper conduct washing over her like a cold wave. Sarah's throat tightened, and she could feel tears threatening to spill, but she fought them back, determined not to give him the satisfaction. The humiliation was overwhelming, but something inside her refused to crumble completely under his harsh spotlight. Mark's lecture continued for what felt like an eternity, his voice growing louder with each passing second as he outlined company policies about eating at workstations. Sarah's co-workers began to shift uncomfortably in their seats, some pretending to work while others openly watched the spectacle unfold. The office manager, Janet, appeared at the edge of the cubicle farm, her expression a mixture of concern and disapproval as she observed Mark's public display. Sarah's hands clenched into fists on her lap, her knuckles white as she struggled to maintain her composure while her supervisor continued his verbal assault. The sandwich on her desk seemed to mock her now, its simple presence having caused such an explosive reaction. When Mark finally finished his speech and stormed away, the office remained eerily quiet, leaving Sarah alone with her shame and the lingering smell of her interrupted lunch. The 30 minutes that followed felt like hours as Sarah sat frozen at her desk, unable to focus on anything but the burning sensation in her chest. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate asking about dinner plans, but she couldn't bring herself to respond, still processing the public humiliation she'd just endured. The sandwich remained untouched, wrapped up and pushed aside like a shameful secret she wanted to forget. Co-workers occasionally glanced in her direction, some offering sympathetic smiles while others quickly looked away, not wanting to become involved in the aftermath. The autumn sun filtered through the office windows, casting long shadows across her desk, as she tried to rebuild her confidence and continue with her work. Just as she was beginning to regain her composure, Janet approached her cubicle with a gentle knock on the partition. "Sarah, Ms. Rodriguez would like to see you in her office," Janet said softly, her voice carrying an undertone that Sarah couldn't quite decipher. The CEO's name sent a chill down Sarah's spine, and she wondered if Mark had already reported the incident to upper management. She gathered her courage and stood up, smoothing down her blouse and checking her reflection in her computer screen to make sure her earlier distress wasn't visible. The walk to the executive floor felt like a march to her own execution, her heels clicking against the polished marble floors as she rehearsed potential explanations in her head. Other employees watched her pass, probably assuming she was about to be terminated for her unprofessional lunch break behavior. The elevator ride to the top floor gave her a moment to collect herself, though her heart continued to race with anticipation and fear. When the doors opened, she stepped into the executive reception area, where the company's success stories and awards lined the walls like silent witnesses to her impending doom. Ms. Rodriguez's office was a stark contrast to the cubicle farm below, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the Chicago skyline. The CEO, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and intelligent brown eyes, gestured for Sarah to take a seat in one of the leather chairs facing her mahogany desk. The office smelled of expensive coffee and subtle perfume, creating an atmosphere of power and success that made Sarah feel even smaller than she already did. Ms. Rodriguez studied her for a moment, her expression unreadable as she leaned back in her chair and clasped her hands together. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sound of traffic far below and the quiet hum of the office air conditioning. Sarah's palms were sweating as she waited for the conversation to begin, expecting the worst, but hoping for some small measure of understanding from the woman who held her professional fate in her hands. "I witnessed what happened downstairs," Ms. Rodriguez began, her voice calm, but carrying an edge that made Sarah's stomach twist with anxiety. She had been returning from a client meeting when Mark's shouting had echoed through the office, and she'd paused to observe the situation from the mezzanine overlooking the main floor. Sarah's heart sank, assuming this confirmation meant her termination was imminent, and she prepared herself for the formal end of her employment. The CEO's eyes remained fixed on Sarah's face, studying her reaction with the intensity of someone who had built a successful business by reading people accurately. The afternoon light streaming through the windows cast dramatic shadows across the office, creating an almost theatrical setting for what Sarah believed would be the final act of her career. Ms. Rodriguez opened a folder on her desk, revealing what appeared to be Sarah's personnel file, complete with performance reviews and commendations she'd earned over her 2 years with the company. The sight of her own professional history laid bare before the CEO made Sarah's throat tighten with emotion, knowing that all her hard work might be overshadowed by one moment of poor judgment. "Your work record is exemplary," Ms. Rodriguez continued, flipping through pages of positive feedback from customers and colleagues alike. Sarah's supervisor ratings showed consistent excellence, and her attendance record was nearly perfect, with the CEO noting several instances where Sarah had worked overtime to meet critical deadlines. The contrast between her documented performance and the incident that had just occurred seemed to puzzle Ms. Rodriguez, who leaned forward with genuine curiosity about the situation. Sarah's breathing became shallow as she realized the CEO was conducting a thorough review of her case rather than simply delivering a predetermined punishment. The weight of 2 years of dedication and hard work suddenly felt heavier than the shame of her public humiliation, and she found herself fighting back tears of frustration and hope. Ms. Rodriguez set the file aside and looked directly at Sarah, her expression softening slightly as she prepared to reveal the true purpose of this meeting. The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility and uncertainty, as Sarah waited to learn whether her career would survive this unexpected turn of events. "I've been looking for someone with your qualities for a special project," Ms. Rodriguez said, her words completely contradicting Sarah's expectations and sending a shock of surprise through her system. The CEO explained that she'd been observing various employees for months, looking for someone who demonstrated both competence and resilience under pressure. Sarah's handling of difficult customers, her ability to maintain professionalism even when faced with unreasonable demands, and her consistent performance had all caught the executive's attention. The incident with Mark, rather than being a mark against her, had actually provided Ms. Rodriguez with valuable insight into Sarah's character and how she handled adversity. The CEO's revelation that she'd been watching Sarah's career development for some time felt surreal, especially after the morning's humiliation and her assumption that she was about to be fired. As Ms. Rodriguez outlined the opportunity she had in mind, Sarah felt the ground beneath her feet shift dramatically, transforming what had started as the worst day of her professional life into something entirely unexpected and potentially life-changing. The special project involved overseeing the company's new customer experience initiative, a role that would require Sarah to work directly with clients and develop innovative solutions to improve service delivery. Ms. Rodriguez explained that the position came with a significant salary increase, a private office, and the opportunity to build and lead her own team within the organization. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to process this dramatic turn of events, from public humiliation to career advancement in the span of a single afternoon. The CEO's confidence in her abilities felt overwhelming after years of working in relative anonymity, handling routine tasks without recognition or advancement opportunities. Ms. Rodriguez emphasized that the role would challenge Sarah to grow professionally and personally, requiring her to step outside her comfort zone and take on responsibilities she'd never imagined possible. The contrast between Mark's harsh criticism and Ms. Rodriguez's faith in her potential created a whirlwind of emotions that Sarah struggled to contain as she listened to the details of this unexpected opportunity. As Sarah walked back to her desk that evening, her mind still reeling from the extraordinary conversation with Ms. Rodriguez, she noticed her coworkers watching her with curiosity and concern. The sandwich from her interrupted lunch sat forgotten in her drawer, a reminder of how quickly circumstances can change and how assumptions can be completely wrong. She gathered her belongings slowly, savoring the moment and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring an entirely new chapter in her professional life. The autumn sun was setting over Chicago, painting the office windows in shades of gold and amber that seemed to reflect the golden opportunity that had emerged from such an unlikely situation. Mark was nowhere to be seen, probably unaware that his harsh treatment had inadvertently led to Sarah's promotion rather than her termination. As she waited for the elevator, Sarah reflected on the day's events, from hunger and humiliation to hope and opportunity, understanding that sometimes the worst moments can become the catalyst for the best changes in our lives. The elevator doors closed behind her, and Sarah caught her reflection in the polished metal, seeing not the embarrassed employee from earlier, but a woman about to embark on an exciting new journey. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate again, asking about dinner, and this time Sarah smiled as she typed back that she had incredible news to share. The city lights were beginning to twinkle in the growing darkness as she stepped out into the Chicago evening, the cold November air filling her lungs with a freshness that matched her renewed sense of purpose. The streets were bustling with commuters heading home, each absorbed in their own daily struggles and victories, unaware that among them walked someone whose life had just taken an extraordinary turn. Sarah's hunger had returned, but now it was accompanied by excitement and anticipation for what the future might hold. As she walked toward the train station, she couldn't help but smile at the irony that a simple sandwich had somehow opened the door to the opportunity she'd been dreaming of for years. The train ride home gave Sarah time to process everything that had happened, from the morning's hunger pangs to the evening's unexpected promotion. She stared out the window at the passing neighborhoods, each one representing different dreams and possibilities, while she contemplated the changes that lay ahead. The rhythm of the train on the track seemed to echo the rapid heartbeat she'd felt throughout the day, from anxiety to shame to incredulous joy. Other passengers around her were lost in their phones or evening newspapers, unaware that the woman sitting quietly in the corner seat had just experienced one of the most transformative days of her professional life. The familiar landmarks of her commute looked different somehow, as if the world itself had shifted to accommodate this new version of herself. When the train pulled into her station, Sarah stood up with a confidence she hadn't felt in years, ready to share her incredible news and begin preparing for the challenges and opportunities that awaited her. Sarah's apartment building came into view as she walked the familiar path from the station, the warm glow of windows creating a welcoming beacon in the November darkness. Her roommate, Lisa, was waiting in the kitchen, having already started dinner preparations, and looked up with concern when Sarah entered. The story poured out of her in a rush of words and emotions, from the morning's hunger to Mark's public confrontation, to the life-changing conversation with Ms. Rodriguez. Lisa listened with wide eyes and growing amazement, occasionally interrupting with questions or exclamations of disbelief at the day's dramatic turns. The kitchen filled with the aroma of their simple meal, as Sarah recounted every detail, still hardly believing it herself. As they sat down to eat together, Sarah realized that this humble dinner with her roommate felt like a celebration of possibilities, a quiet acknowledgement that sometimes the most ordinary moments can become the foundation for extraordinary changes. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a sense of purpose and excitement that had been missing from her life for months. She selected her outfit carefully, choosing clothes that reflected her new role while still feeling authentic to who she was. The train ride to downtown Chicago felt different, as if she were seeing the city through new eyes, noticing details and opportunities that had been invisible before. Her fellow commuters seemed to sense something different about her, or perhaps it was just her own transformed perspective making the world appear more vibrant and full of potential. When she arrived at the office building, Sarah took a deep breath and walked through the lobby with her head held high, knowing that she was about to begin a new chapter that would challenge and inspire her in ways she had never imagined. The elevator ride to her floor felt like an ascent not just through the building, but toward a future filled with promise and the chance to make a real difference in her professional life and beyond. Sarah's first day in her new role began with a meeting with Ms. Rodriguez and the senior leadership team, where she was formally introduced as the head of the Customer Experience Initiative. The conference room was filled with executives she had only seen from a distance, and now she was sitting at the table as their equal, contributing to strategic discussions about the company's future. The irony wasn't lost on her that 24 hours earlier, she had been publicly humiliated for eating a sandwich, and now she was being asked for her input on multi-million-dollar decisions. Her ideas were received with enthusiasm and respect, and she could see that Ms. Rodriguez's faith in her abilities was already being validated by her colleagues. The morning flew by in a blur of introductions, planning sessions, and the gradual realization that she was exactly where she belonged. As the meeting concluded and she was shown to her new office, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude for the unexpected journey that had brought her to this moment. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of learning, growth, and the gradual building of her new team and initiatives. Sarah threw herself into the work with passion and dedication, determined to prove that Ms. Rodriguez's confidence in her had been well placed. She developed innovative customer service protocols, implemented new training programs, and created systems that significantly improved client satisfaction ratings. Her team, initially skeptical of the young woman who had seemingly appeared from nowhere, quickly came to respect her expertise and leadership style. The success of her initiatives began to attract attention from other departments and even clients, who specifically requested to work with Sarah's team. Mark, her former supervisor, had been quietly transferred to a different division, and Sarah rarely saw him around the office, though she harbored no ill will toward him, recognizing that his harsh treatment had inadvertently led to her breakthrough opportunity. As Sarah reflected on her journey from that fateful lunch break to her current success, she often thought about the sandwich that had started it all. She kept healthy snacks in her desk drawer now, not out of fear of criticism, but as a reminder of how quickly life can change, and how sometimes our lowest moments can become the catalyst for our greatest achievements. The view from her new office window showed the same Chicago skyline she had admired from Ms. Rodriguez's office that first day, but now it represented her own accomplishments and the limitless possibilities that lay ahead. She had learned that success often comes not from avoiding challenges, but from how we respond to them, and that sometimes the most unexpected events can open doors we never knew existed. The hungry employee who had unwrapped a simple sandwich had become a confident leader, and Sarah knew that this was just the beginning of an extraordinary professional journey that had started with something as basic as the need for a quick bite during a busy workday.